Okay, welcome to AP Style on numbers. We're going to spell out 1 through 9 in general, referring to a count of things. And we use figures for 10 and above. So that's going to be a little bit different than a Chicago or MLA style if you're used to it. The exceptions are when we have certain numbers or measurements, age, percentage, temperature, and some other ones that we'll mention. Another difference is if a sentence begins with a number, we rewrite the sentence so the number is not the first word, or you have to spell out the whole word. So you'd spell out 25. The exception to that is if it's a year, a calendar year. 1976 was a bad year for OPEC, but 13,000 people attended. We go ahead and spell that out. The third example is if you just switch around and say the crowd surpassed 13,000, then you'd use the number 13,000. We use numbers for ages, dimensions, measurements, so things like years old, your age, the score of a game, height. Those are commonly going to come up in these types of stories. If you're using a fraction or decimals, I just recommend, because those are a little bit more rare, go to the style book to look those up. But pay particular attention, as you're going to see on the quiz, on ages and the different ways to do it. So again, when you use the is or to be verbs, it kind of uses an equal sign, so he equals 8 years old, so it's not hyphenated. But when the modifier is to woman, it's hyphenated. And then you don't need extra words ever. So another way you can say it is just my daughter is 2. That would be correct. Sports score, just 9-6, 28-21, whatever it would be. Next is percent. So we don't use the symbol. This rule is easy. If you see the symbol, you're doing it wrong. Write out the word percent. That's AP style for you. Also with money, we use the dollar sign and we use the period. We don't use the cent sign. And the reason again is because when reporters were filing in old days with these keyboards, you don't have it. So if you look down at the keyboard you commonly have on a laptop, you're not going to see a cent sign very easily. It's probably in one of your alternate or function keys, but you do see dollar sign, so that's why we use that, and we spell out cents. The other one to note is we use decimal places for low amounts, but we want to round up once we get to a lot of money. So you'll see either 2 million, 3.6 billion. We don't use all those zeros because it's hard to interpret what those zeros mean. It's hard for people to count them really quickly. It's a lot easier to use the word million or billion. The other exception being miles per hour. You just use the MPH, so you might see that. Temperature is another exception, so we use the digits or the figures for everything except 0. We spell out 0, and the reason for that is that it's hard to tell the difference in 0 and the letter O. So you want to be really clear always with what you're writing, even in the characters you choose. Hyphenated as an adjective and not as a noun. So the day's low was -10. -10 degrees Fahrenheit is assumed here. We're going to be working for an audience in the United States. We can assume Fahrenheit, and that's okay to use -10. By noon the temperature was 0, but when it's an adjective, the temperature is an adjective, 20-degree temperatures, they're modifying temperatures, then we hyphenate it. So pay particular attention to that on the quiz. You're going to see different versions of that. You should get it right if you follow what's here in the lecture and the PowerPoint. The temperatures, one last note on this, get higher or lower because they are measurements of degrees. They don't get cooler or warmer. Conditions get cooler or warmer. So you always want to be really precise with the kind of words you select. And time. So for this we use lowercase and periods to indicate AM and PM, and if it's right on the hour, say 3 o'clock, it's just the digit 3 in PM. We don't do that :00. So if you see that, it's wrong. However, you do use it if it is an odd number after it. So that's just on the 3 p.m. for 3:15 we would use it. Midnight and noon are two exceptions. If you're seeing 12 a.m., if you're seeing 12 p.m., that's not correct. Use midnight and noon. And then you don't need the extra indicator. You don't need 12 midnight or 12 a.m., just midnight or noon. So don't be redundant. Also, when listening at 9 a.m. in the morning, AM is a signaler for the morning. 9 a.m. will do the work for you. And for further ones, I recommend seeing the entry for time element, time of day, and times. So get right there in the T's. If you got specific questions, you'll see common examples. You'll probably see some familiar things there.